The Tyre Importers Association of South Africa and the National Taxi Alliance say if a new plan to introduce a new duty on imported tyres goes through, transport costs will go up. The group say that 4 companies that manufacture tyres here in South Africa have applied to the authorities for new duties to be imposed to try and help protect the local tyre industry. Charl, Villiers is the chairperson of the Tyre Importers Association of South Africa. Charl, good afternoon to you. What kind of duty are these tyre companies looking at imposing here?
Good afternoon, Stephen, and thanks for having me on your show. The duties they're asking for across the 8 tariff codes range from between 8% and 69.97%, depending on the tariff code. So it'll have a massive impact at the end of the day, should they be successful in their application.
So you're saying it would put tyres up, the price of tyres, by maybe as much as half, maybe a bit over that?
Well, we've done some modelling, and in certain, if I look at the taxi industry specifically, and the percentage they've asked for, remember that we're already paying between a 25 and a 30% duty as it stands today. And if we take the additional duty they're asking for, taxi tyres potentially could go up by 41%.
41%, okay. Are local tyres cheaper than imported tyres at the moment, or are imported tyres cheaper?
Well, that's interesting. There's certain segments and certain sizes within segments that the locals are far cheaper than what the imported products are. For instance, on the smaller sizes, 13 and 14 inches, it's difficult to compete with the local manufacturers on price. They are just so price competitive. So in that instance, the locals are cheaper, and in other instances, the importers are cheaper. So it's not always the same.
I understand that. Let's just focus on, let's just say, the taxi industry for a moment. Those tyres, are those considered big tyres or small tyres?
That's small tyres. That's not a big tyre. No, that's a 14-inch to a 15-inch tyre.
Okay, so taxi drivers now would probably be buying local tyres.
No. Well, yes and no. So the import segment has a big share of market in the taxi industry itself. So the local market, local domestic producers are not able to meet the demand of the taxi association or the taxi market, and therefore it is important that imports supplement what they can't actually deliver.
You're suggesting then that they want the price of some tyres to be more expensive when they can't meet the demand for those tyres?
Correct. They're asking for protection on stuff that they are making locally, and then they're also asking for protection on stuff that they import themselves, which is a bit of a weird one. You can't ask for protection on your own imports.
There's one thing I've learnt in this job, that is when it comes to trade policy, there's always another understanding, Charl. I'm sure you'll agree that they'll have a different version. You say the cost of transport would go up. The National Taxi Alliance agrees with you. But surely it would be by a very small amount. I mean, even a taxi, a vehicle, a taxi that does hundreds of trips a week, probably doesn't change its tyres more than, what, once a year? Would it really have that big an impact on an average commuter?
Well, if you look at tyres as a percentage of your business in the transport industry and most probably taxi as well, is that it's the third biggest cost after wages and fuel. So you would replace tyres more than once a year, definitely. So the impact of tyres is relevant, and it'll have a definite impact on the consumer at the end of the day. If you look at transporters, their cost potentially could go up by 18%. And the impact that'll have on their bottom line is roughly 6%, according to the Road Freight Association.
I find that a bit difficult to understand. You're suggesting their prices could go up by 18% a year, even if they're changing tyres, let's call it 3 times a year. Fuel is obviously the biggest component, by far. Wages, sure. But even if tyres are the third biggest component, surely it's very, very small compared to fuel and wages.
Well, tyres is a big number, Stephen. It's not that small. So the number of 6%, that was calculated by the Road Freight Association based on the number we've provided, what the cost will move by, which is between 17 and 18%. So it's a definite impact on the business at the end of the day, and it's not an insignificant number which can be absorbed by the operators. I've had discussions with a few fleet owners last night, and I explained the scenario to them, and they've just said to me that it's impossible. Any movement in price on tyres today will have to be passed on to the consumer. They can't absorb fuel, wage increases, and now tyres as well. It's just compounded.
So, Charl, look, I mean, a lot of conversations I'm having with you now about tyres are something the chicken industry has been dealing with for about 20 years, and that argument, I think, frankly, is never ending. The argument against you would go like this. I understand that you want to import tyres and that you make money doing that. That's fine. There's no problem with that. But if we were to introduce a tax, a duty on imported tyres, what would probably happen within a year is that the local people would increase their capacity and more South Africans would have jobs. Shouldn't we be doing that?
Stephen, you would, in an ideal world, that is what should happen. And that is, it won't happen for the following reasons. South Africa is part of the global market today, and through globalization, manufacturers have to streamline their plants. And in order to do that, they have to rationalize the number of units that they produce in a specific plant. So we don't anticipate big investment in South Africa. Remember that the South African 4 local manufacturers are also big importers themselves. If you look at their product lineup on offer, and I'm not saying that's what they're selling, I'm just saying what's on offer. They've got about 3,200 units or different tyre models on offer. Of that, 80% is imported and not manufactured locally. We're saying that won't change. What will happen is you will move from an affordable market like China into a far more expensive market, which the 4 multinationals have relationships already and footprint within their chains. So at the end of the day, we're going to increase the cost to the consumer. We're not necessarily going to create more jobs in South Africa.
There's a body that determines all of this. It's called ITAC. Are you going to make representations there?
Yes, we have. We've Donald McKay from XA is handling that on behalf of TIASA. So we've been in meetings and in correspondence with ITAC the whole time, and it will continue until hopefully we can find a solution to the problem.
There's going to be a lot of talk about all of this, and I would imagine that having the taxi industry on your side probably going to benefit you in the court of public opinion to an extent. It also gets to the heart, really, of one of our economic problems, which is, do we create jobs, do we try and expand capacity, or do we continue as we are to import things? I'm sure you can see how difficult this debate is going to be. You're not going to win the support of everyone.
No, I don't think we will. But if I look at localization, I mean, just last night our president said that, they have to rethink their localization targets, given that it hasn't been working. If we looked at pre-localization, our economy was growing at 3.5%. Post that, we were growing at 1.9%. So clearly, localization has not worked. We need to find a different avenue to try and create jobs. And we still believe that the locals are not going to gear up and invest more if they get this duty. They're simply going to import from another market, and that defeats the object.
Charl de Villiers, thank you. Chair of the Tyre Importers Association of South Africa. Do appreciate the time.